Welcome everyone to the first session for those next 3 days. I'm pretty excited and I hope I'm going to learn a couple of new tricks which I can take back and apply in my work. And I hope that this session contributes to that. Right? When I got this topic, I think the topic in itself is not new. All of us grapple with this animal called Gen Z. When Tony came back and said that now is going to be this panel around how do you actually engage Gen Z in the context of new tech and Web 3.0, I was thinking I definitely want to listen to people speak about it. Initially, I wasn't part of this panel. I was separately down there. Happened to be here, but I'm going to use the opportunity to pick on the minds of all these experts that you have in front of you to try and take some nuggets of wisdom back for all of us. Yeah? But getting back to the topic at hand, I think fundamentally all of us do acknowledge that this is a fickle generation that we're talking about. It's a generation that's been born into technology, unlike a lot of us older lot in this room. Right? We've learned our way, learned how to navigate through technology. And therefore, the demands of this generation are very, very different from what we or the way we engage or expect or set our expectations from tech, right, in general. Now, I'm coming fresh out from an experience where we said we want to engage with this TG, and unfortunately, we said the route we'll take is to go and contextualize ourselves in the backdrop of trending videos on YouTube. Right? And before we knew it, we set ourselves a task saying we'll do this for 30 days, ended up creating 300 creatives because this fickle-minded creature doesn't engage with anything that's more than 3 days old, right, in terms of the context that they are engaging with. So the pain is real, right? And I know my agency went through the pain, I went through the pain. But if you're able to keep that aside for a moment, the returns are as real, as it gets. Because if you are able to contextualize, if you are able to use the personalization, the tech that is now available to us to talk to this TG, I think they respond in more than equal measure, right? But that's what I know, and that's all I know, right? I don't know more than that. So with that, I'm going to throw it open to this panel. Before we start, I'm going to introduce this panel. We have Vineet Khanna, who's the co-founder of Supertails. There's Vishesh Sharma, who's the Chief Marketing Officer of Bajaj Financial Securities Limited. And there's Ronak, who's the Head of Marketing for Flying Machine. Yeah, so thanks, guys. Really look forward to being enlightened, and I mean it. So the first question that I'm going to open this with is, what are some of the unique challenges or trends, that you've observed in your endeavor to engage this Gen Z, as we call it, right? And especially in the context of Web 3.0, because that's the other big thing that everyone's talking about.
I think first of all, thank you, Shiny. Thank you, the team that is behind the whole event. I think this is my first time, and I'm really looking forward to some really great experiences and learnings to take back from here. I wanted to just touch upon the Web 3.0 a little bit because there are two parts to this, two different views of the conversation of Web 3.0. Elon Musk says that this is the new marketing buzzword, and that's about it. There's nothing else to it. Jack Dorsey says this is the same Web 2.0 but in a new avatar. because the Googles and the Amazon of the world will not leave their strong hold on the data monopoly that they have. But at the same time, I think the other view that I have is that right now it is an abstract concept. We have not seen a lot of legs on the ground on Web 3.0, how it's going to be implemented, how it's going to come alive, etc. But I also believe in the spirit of humans to find solutions. Kicking, screaming, गिरते पड़ते पहुंच जाएंगे. In that context, I was sort of, because I was interested in learning what Web 3.0 is, and I think some example that perhaps could possibly bring alive how Web 3.0, when it sort of eventually comes alive, how will the world look like? I think one of the first things that for Web 3.0 to actually get implemented is to have proliferation of tokenization. Everything that the consumer does needs to be tokenized. Whether you are transacting, consuming, buying, viewing, anything that you do needs to be tokenized, and that token will be eventually be the single railroad on which all different kind of assets, etc., will come from there. And there is no price for guessing that the Web 3.0 term was coined by Ethereum founder James Wood, I think, in 2014 in one of the blog posts that he had. So the example that I want to share is that there is a browser called Brave. On the browser allows you or blocks all the cookies and all the personal information that you would normally share in a browser. Not only that, it allows you to also monetize your browsing behavior. So the moment you browse, you also get an attention token. So that is a token for the activity that you have performed. There is I think it's a website, and I'm not sure it's an app called Audius. The app is being funded by Katy Perry and some of the other guys. The app basically is supposed to be Spotify for Web 3.0. And the beauty of the app is that the artist can release the song and can interact with the consumers directly. The consumers can have audio tokens, and audio token will enable them to interact with the creator. Similarly, from the business perspective, there is a platform called Avalanche. Avalanche allows tokenizations, and what it allows is instant ability to instantly find. It's called instant finality, where your transactions are getting realized in real time. Like if I were to do a transaction with credit card, it will take time to sort of get realized. But here, anything that you do will immediately get finalized, and transaction will complete, and the money will, or whatever transaction that you do, will be available. Now imagine a scenario that I am browsing on Brave browser. I am on attention tokens. Those attention tokens, I'm going to go to Avalanche and convert them to an audio token. And those audio tokens are going to be utilized in Audius, where I'm going to go and interact with my favorite music artist. Now that is a rough idea of how Web 3.0 eventually will look like, but because everything that you do will be tokenized, and you'll have to have token for that. Now I don't think we are right now in that stage where we have everybody sort of come on board. I think just the way UPI and toll and FASTag, etc., took time to sort of get everybody on board. Similarly, I think tokenization, when it starts getting proliferated, and I think some of the new media companies, gaming, all of those will perhaps lead the charge for tokenization. Once we have that, I think there will be a Web 3.0, real Web 3.0 that we'll see. So I think we are still away. I think it's right now it's a little abstract concept, but I think 10 years down the line, we will all be using our tokens and earning on monetizing our own behavior and transacting on Web 3.0 platform.
Got it. Super. Oh, thanks for that. Vineet, because your product is, and we were talking earlier, it's built on the assumption that this generation will take a leap, right? And they will engage with your category a lot more. It's obviously a very, very important cohort for you, right? In the context of that truth, how important is Web 3.0 for you to engage with it?
I'll add another perspective over here. First thing is, it's not just pets as a category. There are so many categories in the country which is getting driven in terms of growth by Gen Z. And even that segment is further getting enhanced by this new called segment called Zillennials, which is us millennials who behave like Gen Z. So it's a very large segment, to ignore. Just before getting into the Web 3.0 aspect, I wanted to, talk about a few challenges of engaging with the Gen Z. I think Gen Z is more individualistic in nature. They don't like being a part of a list. I'm talking it out of personal opinion, experience, and data, all maybe put together in different proportions. So Gen Z are, people who don't like being part of a list. They want to be spoken to in a more individual manner. That increases a scope for personalization, but also limits us to how much technology you can put it into their conversations. They tend to disengage if they understand the person on the other side is not even a person. So it is a very fine balance that needs to be maintained. I think as Ronak mentioned, before we get into Web 3.0, it is more important to be able to bridge this gap for the Gen Z, Zillennial, and all alike, and be able to engage with them in such a way that they at least feel that they are being spoken to individually and not as a part of a cohort. I know efficiency comes in when we do the other thing, but according to me, this will remain the challenge for tackling Gen Z. We have seen it in our category. Ours is a very, very emotional category. The moment you get into transactional lists and converse with the consumers, you're not going to be able to engage with them beyond a couple of conversations. And that's my learning from how to maybe talk to a Gen Z.
So you've touched on something that's really, really close to my heart, which is efficiency, right? So I'm going to take you up on that, right? So I buy your point that lists aren't the way, but for any business to scale, you will need scale, right? And if you're not going to go the list route, how do you actually personalize at scale? Because when you're operating as a small business, it's great to be talking individual and personalization at micro levels. But when you're talking scale businesses, you're not left with too many options but to start cohortization. So how do you actually bridge this gap?
I think data bridges that gap, according to me. If you're able to, capture more than transactional data, but more meaningful data about being able to put that audience into something more than a transactional cohort. I'll give you an example. If I have a dog food consumer and I have a cat food, buyer, I'll not say consumer, rather dog food buyer and a cat food buyer. Now, that's a very transactional, bifurcation of the same. But if I have developed a business model in which I'm able to capture data which gives this set of individuals a more common belonging than just that they are buying cat food or dog food, I think it helps. I'll give you an example. Like, for example, we do vet consultations and behavior consultations beyond selling products as well. Now that gives us a lot more data to that consumer. For example, we know that the person has a 6-month-old Labrador. Now, if I talk to a cohort of 6-month-old Labradors versus talking to dog parents, you can understand they're both lists, but I'm going to be speaking at a much more individual level in the second case as compared to the first one. So I think you can't get away from lists, but how you can make the variables, parameters around those lists in such a way that you are more on the individualistic side rather than on the group side of things. So that and that's when we have seen engagement happening a lot more from the Gen Z cohort. By the way, almost more than 75% of our customer base lies between the 18 to 32 or Gen Z, Zillennial kind of consumer cohort.
Understood. Thanks for that. I think point well taken. It's a combination of nuanced cohorts rather than one generic cohort is what we're talking about. Thanks. Coming to you, Vishesh, if you can just tell us from a BFSI perspective, because it's a highly regulated category and you have limits as to how much you can personalize and how you personalize. Is there a role that Web 3.0 plays over there to make it easier, more difficult? What's your take on it?
Good evening, everyone. First of all, thanks to iMedia. I won't hope, I know that all of you are having a good time because I'm having a good time too. So, and we have iMedia to thanks for. Problem of responding to a question in the end is unfortunately all the points are covered. So one has already spoken in favor, the other has already given a contra view. Okay. Still, I'll try to add my 2 cents to it. See, before we talk about Web 3.0, let's look at why it was needed in the first place. You know, when we had Web 2.0, it was, I would say, a very dominant land of centralized data repository giants. You know, example being Facebook. Okay, and we were all, you know, bound by how they operated. Just to give you an example, say, if I'm running a business on a social platform, okay, and tomorrow I want to move my business from that platform to somewhere else, I realize that I don't own any of that content anymore. You know, all the follower base, engagement, everything is gone. So, with our generation, we were still very accommodating to all of these terms and conditions. But people who are now getting into the ecosystem, the people we call Gen Z, they are not willing to buy, you know, this kind of undemocratic setup, which is where, you know, there's a lot of hype around Web 3.0. Okay, and I'm pretty excited about this hype because I truly believe that from you know, this Web 3.0 ecosystem will definitely bring a generational shift, you know, in consumer behavior and how basically Gen Z will respond to this kind of ecosystem will definitely change. And of course, brands, you know, not just BFSI, everyone has to adopt to this kind of an ecosystem wherein we are talking more democratic setup. Okay, where the power lies with the consumer, how they want to, how they will only decide how they want their data to be used and the kind of you know knacks which we take from them, how we utilize those kind of. So if you look at from that viewpoint, from a consumer empowerment viewpoint, Web 3.0 will definitely play a big massive role. How, when, what kind of shape and size is something the, you know, we still have to wait for like probably a decade to really understand. But look at how, you know, some of the platforms including OpenAI, you know, have been building on this ecosystem. I'm really hopeful that obviously in the end the consumer empowerment we talk about will be delivered probably through this Web 3.0 ecosystem. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thanks. So Web 3.0 is a reality. It's a waiting game. It will come and make life better, is the net takeout from there, right? But moving from the future to here and now, I think all of us face challenges today, right? And this generation is a reality that we need to tackle today, right? So tell me, and again, let me nuance this a bit better. Instead of looking at this as a generalized cohort, let us now break it into urban and rural. And when one takes a look at it from that perspective, from an inciting perspective, from a human connection perspective, and linking it back to tech, as a marketer, are there differences that you see and changes in the approach that you take? Yeah, and because I don't want to exhaust all the answers before we get to you. Why don't you go first?
See, the divide, I won't say it's a divide between rural and urban. What happened probably about a decade back, the rural, the cost of reaching out to a rural customer was far more as compared to, someone who's in a metro city. But in last 10 years, all thanks to cheap data sets, cheap mobile phones, we keep talking about the same thing. What has happened is, reaching out to a rural set of audience has become easier for every category, not just for BFSI, for every category. And how it has shaped up now, if I'll give you an example, stockbroking industry from where I come from, most of our customers are being acquired from tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities, Gen Z millennials. Okay, now these customers, of course, they always had the aspirations, they always had, the thought of, being treated equally with an urban consumer, but they did not have means. Now, from a brand viewpoint, as well as from a consumer viewpoint, both of us have the means to reach out to each other. That's the beauty of digital ecosystem, and that's the beauty of, we were also talking about Web 3.0, that you can reach out to them. And of course, when you reach out to them, you need to understand probably at some stage their expectations, aspirations will match the urban ecosystem, somewhere they will differ because the mindset is different. They are not exposed to the kind of communication, the kind of content, the kind of pitch which an urban consumer is as of date. So probably you'll have to tweak those communications, which is when something like, let's say, vernacular is picking up in a big way. Vernacular content now has become one of the key pillars for any marketer. Why? Because now you've suddenly started reaching out to a regional guy, and you understand that someone who's, let's say, sitting in Sangli Satara in Maharashtra, Udupi in Karnataka, Gorakhpur in UP, Jhajjar in Haryana, all these people will be more comfortable in their life. It's just one example. So, of course, when you treat an urban, a rural guy, you have to somewhere, make it slightly more personalized, as well as, make sure that whatever the expectation, probably urban is a slightly matured audience, rural, you have to still handle them, and that's how it will work. So, yeah, that's my tool.
Got it. So personalization for urban, vernacular, and talking to them in their style for rural. Got it. Ronak, what's your take on it?
From a fashion category perspective, the rural and urban Gen Z consumers are slightly different. The urban guy is more exposed to global trends, therefore he is aware. He's also a little more demanding, he or she is a little more demanding. And for example, sustainability. Now, for a fashion category which is perhaps the most polluting, and there is a lot of fast fashion leading to dumping of the products in different countries. There are big graveyard of old clothes available. Sustainability for us as a category is a little difficult. It will be expensive. It is not easy to sort of create sustainable clothes when there is a huge demand of fast fashion and quick turnaround, and every 2 months, 3 months you get a new clothes. Like, I was reading something, and Zudio apparently changes the entire store in a week's time. New products coming. So that expectation from Gen Z, the urban Gen Z, that things have to be sustainable, things have to be authentic. Sometimes for some category it becomes a little longer journey. It is not easily answerable. We can't really immediately provide solutions for that. For example, I think there are some slow progress that are being made. Recently, I think one of the SEO summit or some summit, Modi ji wore a kurta or a jacket which was made out of a recycled material, and that entire product is made at a cost of some 3,000 rupees. So slowly we'll also have affordability coming in sustainability, because you have a sustainable product, but it's very expensive right now to produce and also buy. This is urban. The other side, on the rural side, the Gen Z millennial customer from an age perspective is Gen Z consumer. but he has perhaps less access to internet. He has a little different cultural sensitivity towards where he comes from, etc. And I think for rural consumer, affordability plays a very large role compared to a urban consumer. Urban consumer is a little more brand conscious and perhaps wants to spend a little more to be branded, get more branded products. But with rural consumer, I think value consciousness and the affordability comes in much ahead in terms of the benefit laddering that he is seeking. And therefore, the kind of products that appeals to them is very different from a urban consumer. So from a fashion perspective, there are these diverse set of challenges that we face when we target the Gen Z and in the urban setting and target the rural setting.
Got it. No, great. I think we see parallels in CPG, although my fear is over time with access to digital and therefore access to content, to culture, the bridge, that divide is going to slowly collapse, right?
We're hoping that the 999 phone is eventually going to bring a lot of consumers to 4G from 2G, and it probably will help access them, make the access faster, simpler, cheaper.
Absolutely, and which means that from fashion category, you're going to have to do what CPG brands did, right? Give them the equivalent of a sachet, right? All right, yeah.
I just like to add a perspective here. We found one very interesting thing. So, interestingly, our category started in tier 2, tier 3 cities before it started in urban. I'll explain that. We always had shelter dogs, farm dogs, back in our hometowns, which was pet ownership at that point in time. Pet parenthood came in the urban areas later, and since we're talking Gen Z, now it's not even pet parent, it's pet sibling. What I was trying to say was that because the category evolved from a tier 2, tier 3, cities to urban cities, in our category, even the tier 2 evolution has reached some stage. And which is where when we target our consumer, we don't go for demographics. We say if we can find a hypothetical Nathan who's 24 years old, single bachelor, adopting a cat before, he's having the responsibility of a family in Indranagar, Bangalore, we can find a Nathan in Jaipur, in Agra, in Gorakhpur as well. And it's just about being, going for a psychographic profile rather than a demographic profile. Interestingly, for our category, because the evolution has come from that side, belonging to the pets as being part of family has also started in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Distribution is a bit of a challenge in our category when it comes to tier 2 and tier 3, but that's where digital platforms come in. So for us, kind of the strategy has been slightly different, not based on demographics, but on psychographics. And I know till a scale it will be possible, and after a point in scale, we will need to, go to that, demographic differences and those nuances as well.
Got it, thanks. No, but in the same breath, I think the fact that personalization, user experience, innovation, these are all things that this generation does hold very dear to themselves, right? And it'd be interesting to hear from each one of you how you've tried to tackle that expectation in your respective categories. Can we start with you?
See, I'll give you a quick example of, let's say, financial education, since finfluencers, in this category has come up in a big way. So let me just quickly talk about that. This I'm talking about 2011, okay, when how financial education was delivered was completely at the convenience of the brands or the companies. I'll just say, I used to see those content pieces wherein if the PE ratio is right, buy this stock. And my question used to be, if the guy knew what PE ratio means, he wouldn't have required this financial education in the first place. Okay? Now, from that point to today's age and time, wherein I have to ensure that I am present on the platforms which these guys are consuming content on. I have to be present in formats which these guys are consuming content in. And I have to be present in the languages which they are comfortable with. Okay, so it's the multi-format, multi-platform, and multilingual approach is something that's just one point. Also, when I create a content, the blanket creation or blanket approach is gone now. You have to, even in those categories, you have to go a level deep and say, okay, someone who's an active trader, what kind of pain points he'll have. Probably he would need to look at charts, probably he'll need to look at some other, technical indicators. Now there's a guy who's just entering the stock market, who's a beginner. Of course, I can't show him those kind of things. I have to, create a different layer, different kind of communication, different ecosystem altogether for him. And then there's a guy who's a fence sitter, who's not even sure whether he wants to enter stock market. Okay, so this kind of personalization and this kind of, as a brand, I have to adapt to these needs now. All the more. I have no other choice because if I don't do it, there are different brands who are doing it probably better than me, and the consumer is already. That's how one of our competition, Zerodha. I'm sure a lot of you would have heard the name of Zerodha. They just build their entire business basis, personalizing basis, providing people what they need, and that's how they became India's biggest stockbroking house as of date. So somewhere, it was a learning lesson for all of us that, the blanket approach will not work. You have to layer, you have to, instead of what you can offer, the thought has to be what is it that the customer needs. Consumer experience is no more a USP. It's a stated fact. It's the base on which you build the entire ecosystem. So yeah, that's my two cents.
Thanks for that. Ronak.
From a fashion industry perspective, there are some initiatives, some examples that are there. For example, Levi's is doing a lot of Levi's print shop. I was in, I think, a couple of months back in Lollapalooza, Bombay, and saw a store out there, and they're actively sort of trying to customize, enable, empower the consumer to pick a print and then have it customized according to their preferences. I think there are steps that are being taken to personalize, customize, but I think we will have to view consumer as one. Right? I think we will have to do extreme cohorting. Like when we do cohorts, saying there are these kind of cohorts which behavior, shopping patterns, browsing history, etc. But then we'll have to strive to go to consumer of one. There are two examples that I wanted to quote, and not from the fashion industry, but they are very, very sharp and in my mind very, very. One is one fine day from I think, if I'm not wrong, Suburban Diagnostics is a chain of path labs. I got a message saying, hey Ronak, your last HbA1c count was 7.2. It's 3 months past, and it's time to do the test again and check. And here is a 200 rupee coupon or something like that. I was a little surprised because not only the team attempted to further cohort, get the right HbA1c, remind after 3 months, and also incentivize me, saying now time to check. There was another example, not from India, but Tesco, UK. The retailers out there send out coupons to consumers, and then they collect coupons and then mail and all of that. In one family, suddenly the family started getting coupons for an individual for products which are pregnancy related products. The head of the family was a little surprised, saying, what is this and why are these coupons coming to me? And I think he filed litigation or something, saying this is irrelevant for me and what are you trying to do? Their CRM team sent him a message and a communication that based on the shopping pattern on your card, we believe that there is somebody in your family who is in need of these products. And then his daughter came up to him and told him that, yes, Dad, I am pregnant now. So imagine a company realizing an element in the family and information in the family before the family head knows about it. So you have to get into extreme cohorting so that the consumer, to an extent, I'm saying, I would, if somebody does that extreme cohorting to me, I would be also worried as a consumer saying, boss, how personalized and how targeted can they be?
That's a great point, and that's a great segue into my next question, right? That for this generation, data security and privacy are non-negotiable, right? So, how do you address these concerns? So, in this whole race of personalization, and of course, it's on one hand we can call it the mecca where we want to land to, but on the other hand, it's a dual-edged sword. It can really, really hurt us bad. So, how do you actually maintain that balance? And yeah. Why don't you take a stab at that?
I think be upfront about it as much as possible. For example, I'll just give you one example. We saw a tremendous engagement in one of our conversations with the customers. So when we speak to a pet parent, as with every parent, if you ask the name of their kid, there is a smile on their face, right? So with pet parents also, it's the same. So once we get the name of the pet, we started doing communication, directed with the name of the pet as well. But when we use this communication for the first time, because the customer might not remember that they gave this information to us, we always mention to them because you told us their name. And for a certain set of consumers, we did not say that. And we could see a very, very different kind of an engagement. Now, this is a very, simple example to show that if I have obtained some data, this is a very direct data obtained from the consumer itself. But if I've obtained some data, I should be able to use it in the right way, as well as communicate to the consumer how and why I'm using that data. I think that gives a very big reassurance about their privacy, their security. Just goes without saying that the Gen Z will be more paranoid about data. The Gen Z, because they are digitally more active, they are reading about the ill effects of lack of security. They will obviously be more paranoid about it. That's very natural and expected from them. And I think the more proactively we can, or more transparent we can be with them when we use any form of their data in telling. Subtly telling them how that came from, and it is not any form of breach, I think they will relate and engage with us a lot more.
That's a great point. Thanks for that. I think the fact is that trust has to be earned, and being transparent helps you earn that trust. So, yeah.
I think back in the day, I think around 1400s, there was, in the year 1400s, there was information gap, where information was not available like, easily to everybody. In comes Gutenberg in the printing machine, that problem gets solved. In 1800s, there was a gap of power. Everybody did not have power, access to coal, etc. In comes engine, that goes away. I think in 1900s and until 2000s, we had the gap of distance. Everything was very distant. We had information, we had power, we had railroads, airplane, no distance. In comes internet, distance goes away. We are living in a much smaller world. I think now we are in that generation where there is trust gap. I don't trust, the Gen Z doesn't trust. And I think the thing stems from data monopoly, because Google knows a lot about me and I don't know what they're going to do with it, because they're going to make me sign up one very long fine print saying, yes, I agree and I continue. So I don't know, I have no control. I think some of the strategies could be anonymization of data, where you don't really tell people, tell system, machine saying who are you, what are you, etc. Also, to an extent, regular audits, third-party certifications saying that we trust the data is going to be secure. And I think also about control, saying how much control do I have of my own data. Let the consumer decide saying what kind of data does he want to share and where does the consumer give permission. Now we have those accept cookies and other stuff happening. But I think the Gen Z generation, in the context of Gen Z, I think they are perhaps a little okay if you tell them saying this is what we are going to do, and they are willing to sort of share data. I have some team members who are Gen Z saying, ठीक है Google ले लेता है data दे देने दो, कोई problem नहीं है, but at least we know what are they going to do with it. I think that those are the strategies.
I think if I don't barge into this conversation, it will be unfair, because my promoter was recently trending on Twitter when he made a statement that, if you want us not to call you, we will soon have a forget us option, but then don't come to us for loans thereafter. And while he made complete sense, but it put us to some jobs later on, to just take care of the repercussions. But yeah, on a serious side, see, in fact, Rajiv, who's the CMD for Bajaj Finserv, we had a meeting recently and we were just talking about privacy because we at Bajaj are very, very clear how we take care of data privacy and security. And we were just discussing, he made a statement that, the blockchain technology तो आप लगा दोगे, लेकिन इंडिया में इतने जुगाड़ू बैठे हैं आपके ब्लॉकचेन को साइकिल की चेन पे चला देंगे वो लोग. So, the point being, whatever we do, you also need to ensure that, the systems which you're building are safe as hell so that, the data is taken care of, especially in a financial industry where, you have a lot of crucial and personal data which you store. So at our end, we also make sure that we don't post any data on third party. That's a very clear no-go. And we try to make sure that we work with partners who are willing to have this kind of arrangement with us. Secondly, say for a basic thing as WhatsApp. If someone has not given us a consent, we are very clear that we do not do any marketing activity with people who have not given us a consent. Calls, again, this is not only for us, but for our vendor partners also. That you will not call anyone who has not consented for a call. So these are just some of the steps which we have taken care of to ensure, right from audits to ensuring that the systems are built in a way that data is secured. So those are some of the steps which we take to ensure. And I was just talking to someone in office that we should have a consent manager kind of a role. It's a very new role which probably not many corporates have in India, but in US it's a prevalent role. So we just, I had a conversation with HR that let's hire a consent manager whose only KPI would be to ensuring that, all communications are going as per consent. So yeah, that's it from my side.
Thank you so much. I think
Small bit on this on data bit. I was recently watching a Netflix documentary called The Wild World of John McAfee. Now, in the documentary it says that he held governments on ransom because the McAfee software was antivirus software installed in many institutions and their systems, and he had access of lot of data. I mean, it's complete music. Just boggles your mind saying that. मतलब हिंदी में पुराना एक गाना है माझी जो नाव डूबा इसको कौन बचाए. So if the antivirus software is going to collect data and misuse it.
On that note, thank you so much. This was really insightful. Thank you. Any questions anyone has for the panel? We'll take one or two.
I'm afraid we're really running out of time.
One question and then we are out, okay? Before you physically throw us out.
Light that's reaching our panelists from assembly. We'll just very quickly, just 30 seconds.
So my question was that, 25 to 44 year age group was targeted, all the board members are 60 plus. Same with this panel and our workforce, nobody's Gen Z. So target that audience. How do we tap into that Gen Z audience to know how to work with them? Because none of them have any decision-making power in our organizations.
That's where the marketing automation and tools come into picture, sir. That's why CDPs are, being built so that we understand, sir, that we are slightly old school. But that's the challenge, and to meet this challenge, at least in my case, we ensure that we take help of tools, automation, as much as possible. Look at data, look at insights, look at consumer behavior. And then just, to give you an example, when we were setting up the organic ecosystem for Angel One, the first thing I realized that from our sales number and from everything that consumer is not just creating content, consuming content in textual format. Okay, that's when if you go and see entire blog page, entire blog section, every page is in 3 or 4 different formats. So same content you can consume in podcast, you can in a video format, in a textual format, infographic format. So just one example, of how we use data sets and insights to build this kind of ecosystem for Gen Z. Yes, thank you.
Also, I think this collab, which is perhaps in my mind as a lower hanging fruits. Coca-Cola collaborated with BTS. BTS is massive fan following in Gen Z. Gave some glitter. It's like taking their glitter and rubbing it on the brand. One, I think Starbucks did with Ariana Grande. They launched a cloud macchiato drink, and all the fans went and footfall pad gaya store ka. So I think collab is perhaps in my mind the lower hanging fruit to sort of target these guys.
Cool, thank you. I think obviously this is a hot topic and there are questions. Please feel free to catch all three of them. They're going to be around. And thank you so much.
Yeah.